Welcome to CrimePod Castle. It's our Twisted Love series.
Yeah.
And today, we're diving deep into a case from Hyderabad, India, a case that tragically shows how love can twist
Right.
into jealousy and possessiveness,
Yeah,
ultimately leading to devastating consequences.
absolutely. It's a
Now,
story that really makes us think about
yeah,
how important it is to see the signs of toxic behavior and how dangerous unchecked obsession can be.
back in 2017, the city of Hyderabad was shaken by the murder of Anjali Reddy, a 23-year-old medical student. What's truly heartbreaking about this case is that Anjali had such a bright future ahead of her.
It really is.
She was a bright, ambitious young woman.
You're right. Anjali was in her final year of medical school, known for her kind and caring spirit. Everyone loved her family, her classmates. She dreamt of becoming a doctor, of truly making a difference.
It's hard to grasp that her life was cut short in such a brutal way.
It really is.
I was reading through her journals, and it's clear how passionate she was about medicine. She wrote about wanting to work in rural communities, to bring healthcare to those who needed it most.
It speaks volumes about her character, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It makes her loss even more profound.
absolutely. So let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
Can you tell us about Anjali's life
Sure.
and how she crossed paths with her murderer?
Anjali was a dedicated student, but she also had a vibrant social life. She was well respected within the medical school community, and it was there she met Vikram Raj, a postgraduate student at the same institution.
What was their initial relationship like?
At first, they were just friends, connected by their shared passion for medicine. They would study together, discuss cases, and support each other through the challenges of medical school.
It sounds innocent enough. When did things start to change?
Over time, Vikram's feelings towards Anjali deepened. He became romantically interested in her. But she didn't feel the same way. While she valued their friendship, she wasn't interested in a romantic relationship.
That must have been difficult for both of them. Unrequited love can be such a complex emotion.
You're absolutely right. And in this case, it had tragic consequences. As Anjali tried to distance herself from Vikram, sensing his growing intensity, his behavior began to take a dark turn.
What were some of the early warning signs that things were heading in a dangerous direction?
He started exhibiting classic signs of an obsessive personality. Vikram constantly monitored Anjali's movements, questioning her interactions with other classmates. He was always trying to figure out where she was, who she was with, and what she was doing.
It sounds like he was trying to isolate her.
Exactly. He would make snide remarks about her friends, discourage her from going out, and try to occupy all of her free time. It was a gradual process. But he was slowly chipping away at her support system.
Those are incredibly alarming red flags. It's a pattern we see in so many cases of stalking and harassment. Did Anjali confide in anyone
Yes, she did.
about what she was going through?
As the harassment intensified, she confided in her close friends and family. They were deeply concerned and urged her to report Vikram's behavior to the authorities.
It must have been incredibly difficult for her to reach out for help. It takes a lot of courage to speak up in these situations.
Absolutely. There's often a sense of shame or fear associated with being a victim of stalking or harassment. Anjali was hesitant at first, but eventually decided to confront Vikram directly.
What happened when she confronted him?
She made it clear that she wanted to end all contact with him, that she didn't reciprocate his feelings, and that his behavior was making her uncomfortable.
It must have taken immense bravery for her to stand up to him like that. Did he listen to her?
Unfortunately not. He became even more enraged and possessive. His obsession intensified. He began bombarding her with calls and texts, sometimes dozens in a single hour.
It's chilling to think about the level of control he was trying to exert over her life.
Absolutely. He was fixated on her. Anjali was living in constant fear, worried about what he might do next. She started changing her routines, avoiding places he frequented, and even considered moving back in with her family.
Her life was being completely dictated by his obsession.
Tragically, you're right. His behavior was escalating, and it was only a matter of time before something terrible happened.
This is so unsettling. Knowing that Anjali was actively trying to escape, this toxic situation makes the impending tragedy even more heartbreaking. Can you tell us what happened on that fateful night?
On September 25, 2017, Anjali was studying late at the college library, preparing for her exams. It was a Tuesday night, and she was supposed to meet her friends for dinner afterwards, but canceled at the last minute, saying she needed to catch up on some reading.
So she was alone that night.
Yes, she was, as she was walking back to her hostel. Around 10:30 p.m., Vikram intercepted her.
Did anyone witness this encounter?
Yes. Several students reported seeing them together outside the library. engaged in what appeared to be a heated argument.
What happened next? This is where things take a devastating turn, right?
Yes. Sadly, that argument was the last time anyone saw Anjali alive.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the hours and days that followed?
The next morning, a group of students discovered Anjali's body in a secluded area near the campus.
Oh my God. It's hard to even process that.
It was a horrific scene. The news spread like wildfire through the campus and the entire city. Panic and grief set in. Anjali's parents were absolutely devastated when they received the news.
I can't imagine the pain they must have gone through. They had such high hopes for her. And in an instant, everything was shattered.
It was a tragedy that touched everyone who knew her. The Hyderabad police immediately launched a full-scale investigation. Given the circumstances, they naturally considered Vikram a prime suspect.
What was it about the circumstances that pointed to him?
Well, apart from the fact that Anjali had confided in multiple people about his harassment,
Right.
there were those witnesses who had seen them arguing outside the library, just hours before she was found dead.
That puts him right at the scene. Did the police have any other leads?
They did. They examined Anjali's phone records and found a series of threatening messages from Vikram. He had been bombarding her with texts, pleading with her to meet him, saying he couldn't live without her.
Those messages must have been chilling evidence of his state of mind.
They were. The texts were filled with desperation, possessiveness, and a complete disregard for her wishes. It was a clear pattern of obsessive behavior.
So the evidence was mounting against Vikram. Did the police locate him quickly?
Yes, within 48 hours of the murder, they tracked him down to a relative's house in a neighboring town. He had been trying to flee.
What happened when they apprehended him? Did he confess?
He did, during the interrogation. He confessed to the crime. His explanation was chilling. He said he couldn't handle Anjali's rejection, that he felt she had betrayed him, and that he had acted in the heat of the moment.
Blaming the victim, even in the face of such a horrific act.
It's a common defense mechanism for perpetrators of violence. They often try to shift the blame, minimize their actions, or claim they were provoked.
It's a complete lack of accountability. So with a confession in hand, the case went to trial, right?
Yes. The trial began in early 2018, attracting intense media scrutiny and public outrage. The prosecution presented a strong case, highlighting the overwhelming evidence, the eyewitness accounts, the threatening text messages, and Vikram's own confession.
What was Vikram's defense strategy?
His defense team tried to argue that the murder wasn't premeditated, but a crime of passion. They tried to paint a picture of a young man, driven to a moment of madness by heartbreak and rejection.
So they were essentially trying to get him a lighter sentence by saying he acted impulsively.
Exactly. They wanted to portray him as a lovesick, heartbroken young man who just snapped.
That distinction between premeditation and a crime of passion is crucial in a case like this because it can significantly impact the sentencing. What's fascinating here is that legally, premeditation doesn't necessarily mean the defendant planned the murder weeks or months in advance.
That's right. It can also refer to a decision made in the heat of the moment, even if it was just for a few seconds before the act. So even if Vikram hadn't planned the murder days in advance, the fact that he brought a weapon to the encounter suggested premeditation.
Wow, that's an important legal nuance that I think a lot of people aren't aware of. Did the jury buy the defense's argument?
No, they didn't. After a lengthy trial and deliberation, the jury found Vikram guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment.
Justice for Anjali, at least in the eyes of the law.
It was a landmark case in many ways. The judge, while delivering the sentence, spoke about the broader issue of violence against women and the need for stricter laws to protect them from stalking and harassment.
Anjali's case tragically highlighted these systemic issues, didn't it?
It did. Her death sparked outrage and protests across the country, with people demanding greater accountability and safety for women.
Did Anjali's family become involved in those calls for reform?
Yes. They became vocal advocates for change, working tirelessly to ensure their daughter's death wasn't in vain.
That takes immense strength. To channel such profound grief into activism. It makes you wonder if things could have been different, if the system had been better equipped to protect her. It's a question that haunts so many cases like this. If only someone had intervened sooner. If only the warning signs had been taken more seriously.
Right.
Could this tragedy have been prevented?
It's a heartbreaking reality, and it underscores the urgent need for greater awareness, education, and systemic change.
This case, like so many others we've discussed, raises questions about the role of toxic masculinity in perpetuating violence against women.
That's a crucial point. Vikram's actions stemmed from a sense of entitlement, a belief that he had the right to control Anjali's life and choices. This distorted view of love and relationships is often fueled by harmful societal norms that dictate how men should behave.
So how do we challenge these harmful norms? Where do we even begin to dismantle this toxic masculinity?
It's a multifaceted challenge, but education is key. We need to teach young people about healthy relationships, consent, respect, and equality. It's about promoting empathy, emotional intelligence, and open communication from a young age.
It's about changing the narrative, isn't it? Moving away from these outdated ideas
Exactly.
that men should be dominant, aggressive, and emotionally stoic.
We need to create a culture where vulnerability is seen as a strength, not a weakness, where men feel comfortable expressing their emotions and seeking help when they need it.
Anjali's story is a tragic reminder of the devastating consequences of silence. If only she had felt more empowered to speak up sooner. If only those around her had recognized the red flags and intervened. Perhaps things could have been different.
It's a haunting thought, and it highlights the importance of creating safe spaces for victims to come forward and seek help without fear of judgment or stigma.
What can we, as individuals,
Yeah.
to make a difference? How can we move beyond awareness and take concrete steps to prevent these tragedies from happening in the future?
There are so many ways to contribute. We can support organizations working to end violence against women, educate ourselves and others about the signs of abuse, and challenge harmful attitudes and behaviors whenever we encounter them.
It's about speaking up, even when it's uncomfortable, and holding each other accountable for creating a culture of respect and equality.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that this is not just a women's issue, it's a human issue. We all have a role to play in creating a safer, more just world for everyone.
Anjali's story is a heartbreaking call to action. It's a reminder that we can't afford to stay silent. In the face of violence and injustice, we must honor her memory by working tirelessly to ensure that no other family has to endure such an unbearable loss.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Anjali's story. It's a difficult conversation, but it's one that we need to have.
If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, please reach out for help. There are resources available, and you don't have to go through this alone. Remember to follow Crime Podcastle on your favorite podcast app and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more deep dives into compelling true crime stories. Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and as always, stay vigilant.